My name is Andi Grabner. I will be talking about platform engineering. Yet another platform engineering talk. If you Google, there's many talks out there. There's also PlatformCon going on right now. I am a CNCF Ambassador, and as you can see, a walking CNCF billboard with Captain that I started and kicked off years ago. Also Open Feature, which are two of the open source projects I am actively contributing to. I'm Austrian, as I said, and to kick it off a little bit, Austria is not that far away from Switzerland. We're very close. There's also some other things I think we can all be proud of. We all rocked the Eurovision Song Contest, right? Woo! I think it also shows about how really we are into diversity and being open. And the other thing is, I know this is a completely different topic now, but we know that the Euro Cup is coming up. The first time Austria ever qualified for the Euro was actually when we were hosting it with you guys. Now we are back, but we are in the group with France and the Netherlands, so it's going to be a little challenging. But we'll see, fingers crossed. You guys are with the group in Germany, I guess, right? Yeah. Your opening match is on Saturday? Who cares? Nobody cares probably in here. Yeah. All right. So let's get started. Zurich, I think we have a problem. The problem is that 40% of engineering time is productive, which means 60% of engineering time is non-productive, based on the State of DevOps report. And even more scary is that 36% of developers are leaving an organization because of bad developer experience. So, what happened? I thought we are so good in building software and making developer experience great and everybody is happy. What happened, I believe, is that the whole shifting left movement, teams needing to take end-to-end responsibility, is partly to blame. Why? Because if you start small, a team is responsible end-to-end. One of the other vendors that are providing cloud services famously said years ago, you build it, you run it, you own everything end-to-end. And this, I think, is the only way it works in small organizations. The problem is, as organizations grow and every team is doing their things their way end-to-end, whereas I think you were in the second row, you said people then start to copy and paste things from one to another team, right? And because this looks great, but yeah, let's take it. So teams are starting to do things their way, and eventually their way becomes duplicated effort. Not only duplicating code, but also duplicated effort. Duplicating, figuring out how to deploy, how to build, how to operate. What came afterwards, I think, are centralized services as patch solutions, teams that provided pipeline services, testing services, deployment services. And I think where we are now with platform engineering basically says, what are the things that our developers really need to do? We provide them golden paths, and we make it easily available to them using Git as the common interface, because we all live in Git. Obviously, we need to have maybe some other different UIs, some APIs to make it easier integratable. But in the end, platform engineering for me is Git is the interface to provide golden paths as a self-service, like onboarding a new application, as you mentioned earlier. Or you guys, we talked about this in the dinner, you have a cloud service and you want to basically provide your customers an easy platform where they can go in and deploy a new website, new service. So it's essentially providing easy ways to do this. ThoughtWorks also put it very nicely a couple of years ago. Platforms are a mean of centralizing expertise while decentralizing innovation. That means you have experts in your organization that know how to build, how to deploy, how to do chaos engineering, how to do FinOps, how to scale. And you want to figure out how they can centralize this and provide it as a self-service so that they don't become the bottleneck if everyone goes to them and say, I need to build something, deploy something, please write a performance test for me, do the security scan for me, scale it. That's kind of in a nutshell what platform engineering is. Developer productivity is one of the outcomes. The State of DevOps report also says, a lot of organizations that they have surveyed say they have an improved developer productivity. I had the luxury to be on stage at a conference that my company is hosting. I do work for Dynatrace, and I had Marcio Lena from Dell on stage, and he was talking how they implemented self-services, and some of the interesting metrics, they went from about 35% of developer time being productive to 83% of developer time being productive. How was this measured? They were actually taking an external company in that measured the developer productivity with multiple means over many, many months and many, many years, and saw the improvements. All of the other stats are also really interesting. One of them I have a big background in observability, so making applications observable is very important. And one of the things that they have done is 99% of mean time to instrumentation reduction. That means as a developer, they don't need to worry about how to get their logs and their traces, how this works. It happens automatically. How does it work automatically? What they have built into their self-service portal, into the self-service platform, developers only need to put in a YAML file where they have to specify, I want to have traces, I want to have logs, I don't care how it's captured, where it's stored, which tool you use. I want to get the information via Slack, via MS Teams. If there's a new trace that is interesting, if there's a new log that is interesting, then give it to me. Right? So some of these examples are really cool. Next thing is also, if you're on the management side, you always want to say, I heard this at a conference, but I don't know who Andi really is, if he really knows what he's talking about. There are also other organizations like Gartner that many people respect in large enterprises, and they say by 2026, 80% of large software organizations will establish a platform engineering practice. With this, I'm 9 minutes into my talk. Thank you so much. I think I'm done, because it seems the world is a happy place. Fortunately, hype, just because I'm here on stage and talk about platform engineering and a lot of others are talking about it in videos, doesn't mean that the reality is actually good. We have spent months building, so people can read, I like this. We have spent months building this platform. Devs hate it, help me understand why. And this is the classical mistake of, we think there's a problem that we want to solve. We solve it in a way that we think makes sense, and then we give it to our developers, and they say, what the fuck did you build? This doesn't help us at all. So I think what I'm currently also co-authoring a book on platform engineering, where we talk about platform engineering as a product. And this is really the mindset, right? If you build an internal platform, you need to have a product mindset. That means you need to understand who are your end users. Is it your developers, or in your case, your customers? Then have a clear mission. How do you measure the success? Like with any product, if you bring out a new cool FinOps app or whatever it is, how do you measure the success? The same is true with the platform. The measure of success could be, in your case, Sean, I think is your name, right? Like not so many duplicated copy pastes and more services that actually get deployed more rapidly. Designed for good user and developer experience. Not every organization and not every user is the same. If you build a platform for hardcore Go, Rust developers, it probably looks different than if you do it, like in your case, for your customers that might not be that technical. They may need a user interface, the other ones need an API or just a YAML file they put into Git. Start with a TVP, the thinnest viable platform. This is obviously borrowed from building an MVP, a minimum viable product. So don't build the best thing ever, but start with a small use case, build it, validate it, and then build on top of it, and make everything observable. I have an observability background, so making things observable is very important, because then you know, is your platform running or is it not running? Is it used or is it not used? All right. Quickly, I need to quickly kick off the demo. So everything that I have is based on this GitHub repository, and I'm using GitHub Codespaces. And if you're using that Codespace and that tutorial, it spins up Backstage, obviously uses GitHub, Argo, Open Feature, Captain. Captain is the open source project for providing open telemetry traces and open telemetry metrics to measure deployments on Kubernetes, so you actually get a trace for everything you deploy. Obviously, open telemetry, KubeBench, KubeHunter, and then on the bottom, you can plug in any type of observability platform. I do work for Dynatrace, so I'm using Dynatrace, but it's built that you can do it however you want. So what I've built, and just so you know that I'm not lying, so this is really that I forked my platform engineering demo into my own GitHub account. Then I started a Codespace, stunning goggles, almost Google, look at that. What I have built is, let me first start with Argo, just quickly. Argo is used in my case to deploy my platform. So I use Argo to deploy the platform components, but also to deploy the applications later on. So there's Backstage, there's Cert Manager, cron jobs, ingresses, Captain, Kube Audit, what else do I have on page number 2? Open Feature, Open Telemetry, and Argo Workflows. So right now, only my core platform is deployed. One of the core components for me is Backstage. Backstage is a CNCF project from Spotify, one of the development portals that provides service catalogs. And one really cool feature, which I like, is templates. So here, I have created two things. One, a very simple kind of workflow of how I help my developers to onboard a new application. And then very important, I also use Backstage so that developers can give me platform feedback. So is it great? What is missing? And so on. So let me just quickly go through that workflow, create a new app, choose. I made it very simple. I only allow you with this workflow to deploy an existing app. It's called the Simple Node app. Normally, this is where you would say, do you have a Java project, critical backend service, frontend, and then based on that, you pick the template. Very important for me is who am I? Team identification. Ownership is a big topic. I am team number 1. It's a very boring name. So this is team KCD Zurich, right? Because this will also then, and I'll show you later, everything that gets created moved into the Kubernetes CRDs and put as annotations. Here is where I, as a developer, say, hey, what version of the app do you want to deploy? In which environment? Do you want to have DORA metrics enabled? DORA metrics, I get them by installing Captain or enabling Captain that is already installed on my platform on the namespace. Because at Captain, if you this is how it's written, Captain. It automatically creates open telemetry traces and metrics for everything that Kubernetes deploys in the namespace. And it's also application aware, so it actually knows if you're deploying multiple workloads and they belong together to a logical app. We're looking at certain annotations. Then we say how many apps have been deployed, how long did it take, where did it fail. I can also do security scans. The reason why I uncheck security scans, now I'm running on a very small kind cluster. Review, create, and that's it. So now what should happen, pull request is being created. Perfect, everything is good. I can look on view on GitHub. Bam, here we go. I have configured to do auto pull requests. So that means what has been created for me though, as you can see, hopefully, there's a lot of, based on the template, a lot of things. There's the monitoring configuration, there's the Backstage configuration. On the rollout, I have my rollout definition where I also have labels around ownership, where I have these Kubernetes annotations that tell me this is the user interface and it belongs to a certain app. But as a developer, I didn't care at all about all this because the expert team, in my case, maybe me, the platform engineering team, has specified this template. Right? And then I just use the template. So in the back end, what should also happen, hopefully, if everything works as expected at some point, my Argo should pick up that new application and then deploy it. And what I will do now, I'll switch back to the slides, give you some more examples and come back later because what I want to show is that everything got deployed and as a developer, I get immediate feedback on where the app was deployed, I get feedback on my logs, on my traces, and that's kind of the idea of this whole use case. All right, next use case, because there's a couple of use cases I want to talk about. FinOps, we heard about FinOps earlier. Platform engineering is not only about deploying a new app. This was from a bank I worked with. They are providing through their platform, they built their own UI, a self-service where developers can say, I need a new virtual machine, but they also need to specify who they are, which environment, what type of app, and very importantly, on the bottom left, snoozing options. Do they need that VM 24/7 or just for testing from 9 to 5? And depending on that, they deploy that VM and also make sure it's shut down during not needed times and brought up again. And with this, they also used on the back end exactly what Katie mentioned earlier. They're using Kepler and some other tools to actually bring in and calculate carbon impact. And with this, just with simple things like this, shutting things down when they're not needed, reducing costs by 60% because they really get rid of unused resources that are otherwise lingering around. There's different ways to implement it, but the most important thing is you want to make it as easy as possible for those that need it to get the resources, but then you can enforce your processes and best practices. Another thing is open feature or feature flagging. One use case could be that I've seen is if a developer wants to put in a new feature in their code and they're using open feature, they basically, a feature flag is just like a glorified if statement in the end. So if the feature flag is turned on, then execute this code, if not, not. What Open Feature also provides is an integration with, it's called flag-D, on how you can turn on and off feature flags using CRDs. And if we then deploy it with Argo and you change, let's say, a feature flag from true to false, Argo deploys it, then the feature flag will be turned on. And because Open Feature also adds feature flag context to OpenTelemetry traces, developers will then immediately see what's the performance of the feature, how many people are using it, what's the error rate. The nice thing, again, this is all packaged up, so as a developer, I don't need to care about this. I just need to put in my feature flag code, and I then go into my observability, and I can see my traces for my feature or my metrics for my feature. A couple of best practices. As I showed earlier in the example, there's a lot of community best practices to identify what is the deployment, who does it belong to, which version. I think most of them should be standard by now, but I still see deployments where those are not set. If you do set them, a lot of these tools are extracting those pieces of metadata and then enriching telemetry data. So you can, for instance, automatically say, show me everything that is deployed in which version and who deployed it, if you also add ownership to it. Last thing, I do work for Dynatrace, and I've been there for 16 years. We've been around for about 18, 19 years, so obviously we have changed how the way we develop software. And in our latest generation, we have a platform where our developers can build applications on top of our platform. And to streamline it, Sean, again, back to you, instead of copying, pasting from another friend or another team, we now streamline this whole thing. On the top, you see the journey and the tools that our developers use, and on the bottom, the tools that our platform engineering team has built. So when a new application should be built or a new feature, we start with the Jira ticket, clearly, right? In this case, we need a new workflow action for sending emails. This is the Jira ticket product 6192. As a developer, you pick it up. We also use Backstage internally. We have a template. It's called DTP application onboarding. Here you specify your application ID, reference the Jira ticket. Then we use both currently GitHub and Bitbucket for the source control system. So in step 2, they can select where it should end up. Step 3 is team information. Who am I as a team? Because if something breaks, I want to be notified, or this is the way we can send data to them, and then there's a review. Once they click through this wizard, in the end say everything is good, they will get the fully configured repository with everything in there. They just need to code. Once they commit it, code gets compiled, gets pushed. We're using Harbor as a container registry. We're using all these sorts of tools, as you can see here. So in the end, as a developer, I can just either log in to my Visual Studio code space. We're using Gitpod for the virtualized development environments, and then they get the application deployed. They can change the code, they commit, and behind the scenes, everything still runs. There's a really smooth experience. It was easy for me to create the slides. It was much harder for my teams, or the teams in Dynatrace, to build this, obviously. But just to show you that this is possible. Okay? Now, very important for me, if any of those tools don't work, our developers can't do shit, right? Because everything, and I'm sorry for the language, but they can't do anything. If Jenkins doesn't work, if Argo doesn't work, if GitHub is down, God behold, then we have a bigger problem, but, right? So, what I want to show you from an observability perspective, if you own the product of a platform and you manage and you own all of these tools, you want to make sure that these tools work as expected. And this is where observability comes in. You want to make sure that Backstage works as expected. Backstage is exposing a lot of cool logs, and if you analyze them with your log analytics solution, you can immediately say if something is misconfigured. If somebody put in something wrong in the template, and this creates a lot of new instances of applications that are all wrong. Or Jenkins. We are using Jenkins for CI. Mainly right now, we're using the Jenkins OpenTelemetry plugin. So for every Jenkins pipeline that gets executed, we get an OpenTelemetry trace for every single pipeline run. This allows our team that is responsible for Jenkins to figure out, do Jenkinses get slower? How many pipelines are executed? How many fail? You can also see if Jenkins calls to certain systems and the system connections are no longer there, so you can also do easy root cause diagnostics why pipelines no longer fail. Everything enabled through OpenTelemetry because Jenkins exposes it. Harbor, our container registry, We are monitoring Harbor, a lot of great metrics that they expose to figure out, is it fast enough? Can we upload, download, replicate our containers? If this doesn't work, we have a problem. Same is true for Caverno, right? We want to make sure that the policies are all enforced across all of the different stages. Same is true for Argo. All of these examples, the dashboards and everything behind the scenes, it's also available on that GitHub repository in that tutorial, just in case you have questions. Right? So for instance, trying to figure out what is Argo doing behind the scenes by looking at some of the metrics and also the logs. And last but not least, Crossplane. We're using Crossplane very heavily to also provision our infrastructure. And if that doesn't work, then we have a problem. So we also observe Crossplane and individual Crossplane providers because they have to work. Otherwise, we cannot provision new environments, we cannot push things out, we cannot scale. So my main message is, make your platform observable like you would observe any of your business critical applications for your company that you work for. Because if they don't work, this is the most critical set of applications for your developers. Okay, let's go quickly back to the demo. And let's hope that the demo gods worked. I do have, obviously, also slides, screenshots prepared. Here it is. Simple Node app was deployed. Whew, I'm lucky today. So it was deployed. It was a rollout with a replica set. You can also see here Captain workload objects because Captain is active in that namespace and will automatically say, hey, I detected a new workload, I detected a new app, creates metrics and traces. Captain can do a little bit more things, but this shows me that it should have worked. Then what else can I do? I'm in Backstage. As a developer, I would come here and I would say, give me my component. My component is here. If I scroll a little further down, I have my links to my GitHub, my Argo. I can see that I can go directly to my logs. I actually bring the logs directly into the screen for the developer. I'm good. I have no security vulnerabilities, no problems. But if I want, I have a single click. And then I also get, if I want to do a little bit more maybe on analyzing the workload, I can analyze all of the details here, right? And the point is, you want to make sure that all of this data is easy available and easy accessible, and you want to bring it to the tools where your developers are. And they don't live in Grafana, they don't live in Datadog, in your Relic or Dynatrace for observability, they live in Backstage or in the IDE. So bring the relevant data to them there, and then if they need it, they obviously one click, like I showed here, you can get to the additional information. Cool. So, 2 minutes, awesome. Successful platform engineering, hype versus reality. I think I started my talk saying the status quo is actually not really looking good, right? I think we can do better. I think we have seen that we can do much better. The examples that I gave from Dell and also from that bank, and all the examples that I've given you, there is a better way of doing things, and I think, if I not want to stand in the middle of the most important thing, lessons learned, find the pain points, understand where people have a problem right now, have a clear mission, design for great experience, work with them, invite them to become part of the platform engineering team, define the user journey, start with a TVP, the thinnest viable platform, or the MVP, the minimal viable product, and make everything observable. And there's a lot of other resources I want to point out. The report I mentioned is the State of DevOps report, left. Next one is a CNCF white paper. The working group on platform engineering has done a white paper, and also they are currently working on a maturity model. Then that's the GitHub tutorial. Also GitOps, there's also, if you didn't know, Open GitOps initiative on defining standards around GitOps. And also Katharina Sick, she's one of my colleagues, and she helped me a lot with a lot of stuff that I showed today. So a big shout out to her. And I believe that's it. I want to make sure that we all have a good conference. Thanks for bringing us all together, and hop Swiss soda for the Euro Cup.
Awesome, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Hands up.
So, thanks for the talk. You started with this 40% of developer time, right? Do you have any information what the actual reduction is? Because you make, I think you make the claim that it is technically based. I have personally another feeling. It is organizational based, Scrum based, or how we all call this stuff. I already hear it.
I think it's going to be probably a little bit different for all organizations. It's not only technical, it's also process-based, like how many hoops you have to go through to actually get something done. That depends again on the organizational structure, who needs to approve what things, who is not so easy to take a risk maybe, or approve things. So it is definitely something where you need to look at the whole value stream. Right? I mean, that's the same thing that you would do in any kind of, I would say, product development. You kind of figure out how are people currently doing things and why is it so hard and how can we make it better? And that includes more than just installing a new tool or providing a new API. That's correct. Yeah. So don't go home, install Backstage, and think this solves all of your problems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More questions.
And while we wait, there's a question all the way in the back. And by the way, I have some captain stickers later on. I don't have much swag, but some captain stickers, and I have some, what they call buffs for the first ones later
Maybe
on.
2 steps, 2 throws.
Yeah. So all the way back.
Or 3.
There you go. This is continuously delivering the microphone.
Perfect. Thank you for the nice presentation. It was really interesting. We are actually doing exactly the same thing. We're trying to build the full pipeline and try to kind of release our developers from everything that they have to do in the background, at least on the platform side. So my question is 2-part. First, how long did it take for you to get to this minimum viable product or the platform that can actually be used by, let's say, I don't know, 60% of developers? Because 40% you're probably never going to satisfy. And the second part of that question is, again, in that regard, how did you deal with opinionated developers? So if teams have a specific way of doing things and then you offer a platform, they said, come on. Who are you to offer? Huh?
Yeah,
so
a couple of ways to answer this. As I said, we have been around for about 18 years, so that means we have a lot of different software, and most of this still uses some other ways of deploying. This is what I showed you, the Dynatrace way. This is for our new apps that our developers are building, and this was basically created over the course of the last 2 years. It started actually out that we built our own kind of version of what Backstage provides for the templates. And then we said, why do we build this? Why do we maintain this? We just go with what Backstage has, and then extended it a little bit because some things were missing. So it took a long time for us, to be honest with you, right? It took really about, I would say, roughly a year or 2 years. That's the first thing. Opinionated developers, you don't need to solve the problem for every development team, for every stack. You should do the 80-20% rule. You figure out what are the biggest problems of most people, and then let's try to solve this. And not for the exotic developer, right? If they still want to do it their way, but that also means they need to then take more responsibility. And so I don't try to solve it for 100%. That's not possible. And the other thing I want to highlight, make sure that you as a platform engineering team don't become the bottleneck. Don't build platforms that only you can build, you can operate, and you can extend. I think that's also a very important piece, because otherwise you will be the one that is always like, we want to do more with the platform, but we don't have time. So build a platform that also gives some flexibility, either to be extended or where people can use parts of it and then do certain things their way.
thank you.
More questions? There is time left for 1 additional question. And if not, it seems our caffeine level is dropping down. Round of applause for Andi. Thank you very much.